Pregame.com.
Welcome back to Pregame.tv. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo, joined in studio by Ken Thomson, SportsX Radio here in Las Vegas. We're going to preview Minnesota. They're traveling to play New Mexico State, and we're taking a look at this game. And if you just look at scores from last week, and we say that's always a dangerous thing to do when you're handicapping football games. You got to dig inside the numbers and look at the games. You're going to look at Minnesota and see they put up 51 points last week, beat UNLV 51-23. I'll take the win, thank you. They paid me just fine, but that game was never a 51-23 game by any stretch of the imagination last weekend.
No, there were a couple plays that went the other way. You're talking 28-point swing on a blocked field goal return, also an interception return. UNLV's going in to score. It's actually a 24-point swing because if they make the field goal, it's 3. They're literally picked off on the 11-yard line on an 89-yard touch and interception.
I got tired watching the guy run it back.
Oh, I will say this, and I left a message for head coach Bobby Houck. You can't choreograph some of the crap that happens to UNLV when they're on the road.
It is, and there's streaks now at 23 in a row 23. They've lost. And what happened in that game, and this is the problem, and I don't want to say hindsight's 20/20, but when you're a team that struggles to win, and let's face it, this UNLV program, it's struggled for many, many years and many, many coaches here at UNLV. When something bad happens, good teams are able to brush that off and move on. But bad teams, it's almost like a snowball just going down a big hill, and it just keeps getting bigger and faster and bigger and faster till it hits the bottom. And when Minnesota scored right before the half.
Right before the half, they erased a 13-10 deficit.
Take the lead, come out and take the opening kickoff.
Right, 98 yards. Gone.
You looked at the sidelines of the UNLV players, and there was not that swagger that you saw in the first half from this team. And that's something, and you can't blame the coaches for that. That is just, this team is so used to losing. And, how do you that's why I always say when people get high on teams that showed some life the year before, I say they got to learn how to win first before you're ready to make that next step. And I think that was the case for UNLV, but that's UNLV. Let's talk about Minnesota. If you look at Minnesota, if you're a handicapper, and we do this every week, people use power ratings, they adjust their power ratings. If you watched Minnesota last week and you watched that performance against UNLV, if you're grading them, are you keeping the number on them the same as it was going into the game? Or are you adding points to their power rating, or are you taking points away off of that type of performance that was very misleading in the stats?
Well, here's the thing. I'm adding points as far as their special teams, because their special teams did have to make those plays, step up, return the kickoff, block the field goal, run it back. The defense had to pick one off, go back 89 yards. So those things, you don't count on those things. They do happen. The offense was not impressed at all with Nelson throwing the football. He could not. There's Fezzik.
Fezzik, he's like a fly. There's a little fly in here, and I guarantee you that's Steve Fezzik, because he'll do anything to get in here and find out who we're using ahead of time. He wants to get down to the book and get the numbers before they change.
The advantage gambler never sleeps. That's Steve Fezzik. The fly on the wall.
Get me a fly swatter, Barry.
It won't do any good against Fezzik. That swatter will be broken. But, the Minnesota Nelson, he did run the ball nicely for a quarterback. Also, Kirkwood got hurt, their leading running back, and that hurts going into this week in Las Cruces. Now, again, New Mexico State, new coach, Doug Martin, not a lot there as far as talent, but there are some players that are back, and then there's some new faces that you may not have seen last year that are stepping up on the scene. So it's their home opener. Looking forward to this game just because I like to grab teams that, and I watched probably 17, 18 games back, and there's several of the games I watched twice and even more than that. I splice them down and kind of look for different things. And I'll keep doing that throughout the season because I'm not somebody that just looks at box scores. Right. Because there are, like you said, when you watch games, you're looking at 51-23. Wow, Minnesota, they blew out UNLV. No kidding. Okay, they're the same old road team. No, they were up 13-10, and then 24 points that go the other way instead of, 10 that go their way.
Now, how do you feel when a team like New Mexico State, they stepped up in class last week big time and, took on Texas and just got, the snot knocked out of them, Or do you worry sometimes that, after a physical beating, from a team like Texas, that there's a little bit of a carryover effect from, getting beat up like that?
Here's what I like is New Mexico State, no injuries from the game. That's huge. I mean, you tell me I'm going into Austin. Talent-wise, we know there's no comparison, but I'm going into their stadium where for the first about 3 minutes into the second quarter, the game's scoreless, and then New Mexico State takes a 7-0 lead. So you kept Texas off the scoreboard in their home opener for the first 18-plus minutes of that game. Of course, they got it rolling, and their depth and Ash and company really got things rolling, and then they just stepped up. And like you said, football is a game of momentum, and their depth took care of business. Remember, teams that are traveling on the road, and it was evident at Oklahoma. I watched that game back in Monroe. Monroe bringing 65 players and not a lot of guys on defense. 100 degrees down on the field. Late third quarter, their guys were dead. And so a 13-0 deficit quickly manifested into that 34-0 final score.
These early September games, playing in the Deep South, playing in Florida, playing in Texas and stuff like that. That's something you got to consider the temperatures.
Sure.
Wearing these guys out. I mean, they're playing hot, humid weather. You're wearing pads. And let's face it. The linemen are all basically these days. If they're not 280, 290, they tip the scales over 300. These boys, that's hot, and teams wear down. And when you do have these talent gaps like that, you can see these, even though teams take their foot off the gas sometimes in the second half, because of the talent level discrepancy, it still can get pretty nasty in the fourth quarter for these teams.
I agree.
You know what? This is your free pick, so let's make it official.
Let's do it, Marco. Marco made a good point as far as the weather. New Mexico State, Las Cruces, let's remember, still the desert. These guys, these teams, we talk about a UNLV, an Arizona State, a New Mexico State. These guys are practicing in 100-plus degree weather all season long. I mean, they're used to it. So now you're going to get a team from Minnesota. They've gone up there, and yes, the summers get humid, but at nighttime and indoors where they play sometimes, and then even outdoors. Now Minnesota's an outdoor team, getting some nice weather, going to be down around 70, 65 at nighttime. No problem there for the Gophers. Now, take that over to Las Cruces. This game will be a 6 o'clock local kickoff time, and I think the weather will help out as far as the Aggies. I'm going to be on the Aggies. Here's why. New quarterback, Andrew McDonald. The name sound familiar? Paul McDonald, the southpaw for Southern Cal. Got to watch the guy, All-American quarterback for Southern Cal. This is his boy. This is his son. He stepped up nicely against Texas. Again, they were outmanned, but he was 32 of 46, 242 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Good stats against a good, solid Texas defense, and I think the best secondary in all of the Big 12. Texas is loaded secondary-wise, and they have a lot of depth, and they had that depth on their home field. Minnesota, again, 51-23 over UNLV, really not impressive on offense, and they lose Donnell Kirkwood out of the backfield. That's huge. He's doubtful. Looks like he's not going to play. Again, this is Wednesday night, but last I saw, and from my folks up there in Minnesota, he is not going to go in this game. I'll look at New Mexico State, got a couple receivers, Bowen, Matthews, and Brown, all three pretty solid, but Bowen's the main guy, had 8 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown in the opener. Also, Jeremy Morrison, the running back, he needs to get it going. He did not get it going against Texas's defense, who kind of put 8 in the box, daring McDonald to throw until he loosened him up a little bit. But Morrison just 12 carries, 25 yards. Had a couple good runs, but then he got thrown for losses, took off his average. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, again, Nelson, very solid on the ground, 83 yards and a couple touchdowns on 12 carries, but throwing the ball less than 100 yards, 10 of 22, 99 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception against the Rebels. And again, the Rebels outgained Minnesota offensively by nearly 100 yards. Gudgeon, their tight end, also questionable with a knee injury. They do have some good, solid special teams play that I talked about, and they'll need that to cover the line. I'm not saying New Mexico State wins the game. I think it'll be a 1-possession game. You're going to give me 16.5, the home team. Give me the weather in my favor, and also give me McDonald, who I think has a bright future over there in Las Cruces. It's my play on pregame.tv for Saturday. Give me New Mexico State plus 16.5 against Minnesota on the road, Marco.
All right, sounds good, Ken. And do you feel old? I mean, me and you are about the same age when we're starting to watch players that we saw, their kids now playing. What's that do for us?
You know what? Hey, Lord still has us here. We'll take it. We hope to see their grandkids.
Yeah, well, some of us are here with more hair. I won't mention who. All right. He's Ken Thomson. I'm Marco D'Angelo. We'll be back. We're going to take a look at some NFL Sunday action up next here at pregame.tv.